This oral history was recorded on June 1st, 2022 at the Arcadia Public Library. Today I am interviewing Joe Sciarra, a World War II veteran and longtime Arcadia resident. Joe, please introduce yourself and tell us when and where you were born.
Yeah, my name is Joe Sciarra, and I was born in Chinatown, on Broadway in Alpine in 1924. And
so that makes you 97?
97, yes.
What is the secret to your longevity?
I don't know, I had a beautiful life with a beautiful woman for 73 years, and I had such a happy life, and she treated me very well and fed me well and did everything to make a husband happy, and that made me happy with her too, and I loved her very, very much.
Do you avoid eating certain things, or what do you eat for your health?
Well, actually, being the Italian background, I had a lot of Italian food, which I love very much. So you take the variety of Italian food, is great. And I like my steaks, and I like my American food very much so, and hamburgers and whatever it takes. So I lived a pretty normal life and didn't really work on my diet. I just felt good, and I was just a very happy person.
What's your exercise routine?
Well, I have a body exercise I use, and that is my arm, my legs, and I have a stationary bike that I get on, and I guess I walk a lot, and I sort of live a very much normal life, happy life, and that has a lot to do with it. And I'm not a drinker or a smoker, so that might be some contribution to my longevity. My mother lived to 99, so there's a little background there too that might have been inherited.
Which war are you a veteran of, and which branch of the armed forces did you serve?
Okay, I was a World War II veteran. I served in the Pacific, and I was in the infantry under the guidance of General MacArthur, and I was 18 years old when I was drafted.
Was that the Army or the Navy?
Army.
Army, okay.
Yeah.
What was your rank and where did you serve?
Well, I started out as a private, because the day after I graduated, I was drafted. And so there was no choice for me, evidently, because of the fact that there were so many losses in the Pacific that they needed men, and wherever they were needed, I was placed, and I was placed in the 25th Infantry Division, and I was in the 27th Regiment, and they put me into a heavy weapon company, and I was a private in the 81 millimeter mortar squad, and I was a private when I first started, and so but it goes on more and more after that. I ended up being a platoon sergeant, and I can tell a little more about that when you're ready.
Okay. So which country did you go to?
Okay, I was in the Pacific, and I was on most all the islands. The first island after I left San Francisco was New Caledonia. And it took us 30 days from San Francisco to New Caledonia. And it was an island, it's a French colony. And so we were sent there, and we trained there for 9 months. And there's a separate reason too. New Caledonia was a very important island because in Guadalcanal, that was a very important island for the Japanese. And when we took it over, I mean, it was very sad for Japan, because Japan needed that. And the next, why New Caledonia was important, that was our next step. They needed New Caledonia island in order to put bases in there, and they would be in striking distance to Australia and New Zealand.
So did you see combat?
Okay, combat was a big thing with me. After 9 months, we all were ready for combat, whatever it was, and we entered on a Liberty ship. And to start out with, I was 19 years old in New Caledonia. Then we went to Guadalcanal after we left New Caledonia to get supplies. And I'd become 20 years of age in Guadalcanal. And so after we left Guadalcanal, our ship started sailing. So we hit many of islands, about 4 or 5 islands on the way, and all of a sudden, each morning I wake up, we find 2 or 3 more ships, joining us. And before long, we had 100 ships, and we had the flag ship, which was General MacArthur was in. And then we went to the Philippines, Luzon, and made a landing there with about 68,000 of our men and our operation set in 100 ships. And so I was the 81 millimeter mortar, I may like to say, is a weapon of three parts. It has a tripod, it has a tube, and a base, and each item weighed 45 pounds. So when we landed in Luzon, the Philippines, I was the number 2 man, and on the tube we have a number 1 is the person who directs the shell, and number 2 is the person who throws the shell in the tube, and then we have a base. And so so we landed in Luzon, Philippines, and we had quite a bit of activity there. The Japanese gave us a little rough time, mostly with their planes and bombing. So when we landed in the Philippines, I had not only my pack, the tube. The pack weighed 60 pounds, not counting the tube. And so when we landed off the landing craft, when we jumped out, the landing craft landed on a bomb shot. What they call, I'm trying to think the name of the bomb. That was quite an independent. So we got out of the little landing craft. We actually got in underneath this water and completely depth, and we had to walk underneath this water into the land, and so we all gathered together, get our platoon together, and we start moving out. And our job in the Philippines was there was 47 ridges. The Japanese had 100,000 men that were surrounding it. So they had all the high spots. So our job was there to take over those 47 ridges, because there was a pass going either the south. It was blocked by the Japanese, and that pass was needed to get through. And they call it Balete Pass. And and that's the direction we've been going. And then finally we got there, and it's mostly all jungle fighting. And so my first experience before hitting the ridges in our platoon sergeant we had 3 sections and 4 squads and 6 guns, 6 81 millimeter guns. So the first section was asked to, in other words, we were trying to locate the enemy, so they took the first section to go out along with a company of riflemen, infantrymen. And so when we went there, we were ambushed. Well, ambush is, I don't know if you understand what it is. Once you get in there, you never come out. And so so we were shelled. We set up our weapons, and we were shelled by the Japanese, and 3 of our men got killed, you know. And so we heard the F word a lot, you know. Well, the F word saved my life and saved the rest of our section's life. When the lieutenant says, "Get the F out of there," we knew we were in trouble because the shells were aimed at our position. So we did, and I got out of that pretty good. But as I going out, I had a lot of. I took my tube. That was the 45-pound tube. I took it out, and I ran with it, and the shrapnels were hitting my tube. Instead of hitting me, it was hitting my tube. You can hear all these shrapnels are. And I did get a few little cuts here and there, and one on my thigh. I never reported it to receive anything for it because the sadness of 3 men being dead, you know. Then we did go back and pick up our men and take them out, you know, and do what we had to do to get them ready to be picked up. But we got to that okay. We got did very well. Then we start going towards the 47 Ridges. Well, the 47 Ridges was not an easy task for us because the Japanese were on top of the ridges. And so as we go on, they had a lot of snipers, and so they were able to pick out a lot of the officers, and they're in view of our direction and where we're going, you know. So so anyway, to cut the story short a little bit, it was all jungle fighting, and we were there maybe 2 to 3 weeks at steady basis, trying to take those ridges over. Then we were relieved by another battalion. So as we come down, we had to strip naked because we were full of lice. Because in a jungle is something, you know, you live in. It's living like an animal, really, you know. And we did that. We had our R&R. Then we had to go back and relieve the other battalion, and so we lost so many men, and so we were taking ridge by ridge, and so it took us 5.5 months to take over all the ridges with a great loss of our men, you know. And I witnessed every one of our men that were killed, and I right next to them. A lot of times I feel that the Lord must have been with me in many ways, because I'd be right next to them where they were decapitated, and here I was, you know, not touched, and I just, it was and you have no time to get emotional. I mean, we had to keep moving right along, because each time we find our men being shot or killed, you know, it made us guys that more angry to go after these guys, you know. And so I can tell you one story, if I can.